Right, so today we're very glad to have with us Peter Jonas. Peter is a member of the chapter and resides in the Arcadia area, just to the south of Eau Claire. Peter's been a long-time fly fisherman and active in many areas of trout and Trout Unlimited and habitat. So Peter, thank you very much for being with us.
I am really happy to be here today, Tom.
Yeah, we're really glad that you're here. We should mention also, Peter very generously donated a guided trip to our chapter raffle last spring. So thank you for doing that. That also was wonderful and be a great opportunity to be with you once all of the social distancing and things have cleared and so on. So Peter, talk to us a little about how you got into trout fishing, kind of the 30-second history of fly fishing with Peter Jonas.
I had two wonderful mentors as a trout angler in the late 80s. One of them was Tom Helgeson, who used to own Brightwater's fly shop in Minneapolis. And Tom was just so generous with his time and a conservationist and passionate. And then I lived in the Madison area, and there was an old gentleman, Lowell Gingrich, that I met through TU. And Lowell was, some people thought that Lowell was just kind of a cantankerous old man, but he had a flock of disciples. In the wintertime, there were so many people coming and going between fly tying and rod building and just wanting to drink coffee with Lowell, that he had one of those big church coffee 55 cup. That was their family coffee pot. And,
none of the 12 cup carafe things, right?
No. So Lowell was very dear to me.
That's great. That's great. I know that you have a lot of years of fly fishing under your belt and have certainly developed some expertise and interest. So we wanted to pick your brains for our 2 tips, a tie and a tune series that we're doing here with the chapter. So let's just jump right into it.
Sure.
So talk to us about 2 tips that you have for people who are trout fishing, fly fishing in our area.
Well, one of them is, I guess, in short, to not get locked in to rules or practices. For example, I was always taught, you stand on the slack side of the stream, currents on the opposite bank. That's how you fish it. It was like an article of the Constitution. You don't vary. I've always had trouble fishing big, slow pools. They're silty on the slack end. You get in there, it starts swirling around. It's just a disaster. So I was watching some fishing videos this winter, and I saw a fly angler in Wisconsin. The water was not totally clear, which I think is important for this technique. And I see him stand on the high bank and kind of get himself up against it to camouflage itself right on the current side and just basically cast up the chute. And I'm like talking at the computer, I'm saying, you can't do that, and until he starts pulling trout in.
Sure.
And so I tried that technique. Water's been super clear this spring, so it's not a technique for clear water. But if you get a day where the water's got some color in it, it can be very effective.
So he's casting upstream then. So he's basically in the high bank casting upstream.
Yeah. I mean, it's for, the conditions have to be right.
Sure.
And he was using quite a short line, but I've tried that, and
interesting.
Actually, the fish don't care if you're following rules or not.
They just don't seem to care that much, right?
No.
That's great. Yeah, that's a good point. So it's not getting locked in. Don't get locked in. Do something a little different. And that took you how many years till you started doing that?
Yeah, like 30.
Yeah, that's all. That's all. Just think what the next 30 years secrets you'll unlock, right?
I might learn a second thing.
Maybe you might. might. So yeah, good point. So and even for, you know, sometimes we have people who are new fly fishermen or trout fisher people watching this, for the new, for the old, for the ones doing it 30 plus years or just starting out. Yeah, do things a little differently. That's
Yeah.
a good
Yeah.
point. Good point. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay. So don't get locked in. Be flexible. Talk
Yeah.
to us about another tip that you have that you would suggest.
You know, the thing that is really on my heart to talk about with this is, as a fly angler, one of the things that it awakened in me in a way, because I started out worm fishing and spinner fishing for trout, but one of the gifts that fly fishing gave to me was enhancing my powers of observation, because you are, like, you know, I used to see trout splashing around when I fished with a night crawler. I haven't, but I literally didn't see the insects because, you know, you're just not looking for them. And so you start to see as a fly angler, and then you build that relationship between predator prey and between the fish and the aquatic insects. And then that widens out a bit more, and you start seeing the stream as a part of a watershed. And then the conservation issues come to fore about, you know, what does it take to have a healthy watershed? And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that for me, angling was a way to really get to a visceral understanding about, you know, what all Leopold talks about when he talks about a biotic community and the interrelation of living beings and their necessity. And so I guess my second tip is basically, you know, remember the big picture, that as an angler, we have this insight into all of the interconnections of, you know, whatever our quarry is, but also everything it takes to make a trout possible, if you will. And, you know, just a plug for one of our Wisconsin geniuses. If you haven't read Sand County Almanac, and although Leopold was so legendary in his and prophetic in his thinking about these interconnections, this, in fact, this is a new edition with an introduction by Barbara Kingsolver that the Leopold Foundation is developing. So I guess that's my second tip, is to just allow fly fishing to be a way of entering into the big picture.
What a great point. And, you know, whether it's true now more than ever, but to not get so hung up on, how many am I going to catch? Which one am I going to catch? Who's at the bridge? But that big picture, and the fortune we have to be able to be part of that big picture when you're knee deep in the water somewhere in the middle of the trout stream. That's a great point. Great point, and great recommendation on the book. Yeah.
And I was fortunate that as I mentioned, the anglers who mentioned me or mentored me were all about that.
Yeah.
They were true warriors in terms of ecological issues.
Yeah. Yeah. And does it seem like that, you know, by getting into the stream, or, you know, being there and the things you see and the things you do, you almost can't help but become more motivated to make sure that waterway stays protected? And it's about more than just a brook trout or a brown trout, but about, I think you called it the biotic environment, that making sure that sustains. Yeah, that's a great points, wonderful points, and thoughtful points too, that speak to the bigger capacity of being out on the stream too, for sure. Let's talk about a tie. So we have two tips from you. Let's talk about a tie. What's something that you are drawn to or like or have in your box that you find useful?
Well, I want to tell you about my sort of stormy relationship with the hippie stomper. I love terrestrial fishing in the summer. That is one of my favorite styles of fishing. And I resisted fishing the hippie stomper for many years. And the main reason is I just thought they looked ridiculous. And I thought no Spring Creek trout would ever hit a fly like that. And if I did catch one, I'd be embarrassed for it. So I just wasn't, you know, didn't want anything to, and once in a while I'd stop in a Driftless Angler, and Matt Wagner and I had talk about terrestrial patterns or this or that. And I'd be like, well, you know, what do you, he's like, oh, you got to fish the hippie stopper. I'm not fishing that ridiculous looking thing. Well, 2 years, I finally broke down and bought a few from him. And oh my gosh, sure, you know, it's like got a purple bottom on it. And
no, crazy,
you know, and I'm catching fish like crazy. And then last year I just thought, well, I guess there's nothing else for it. So I started tying them. So I tied up a couple dozen, and I really like fishing them with fish a hippie stomper sort of as a sighter, and then a very small ant that is hard to see, and a couple feet behind.
Sure.
And I don't know why it works. I actually think that the green and tan ones imitate a hopper, because that's what the bottom looks like.
Yeah, that profile.
Yeah, but they work. And I was very reluctant to come to the table. Yeah.
But you've now come to the table of the hippie stomper.
Yeah, I have embraced it completely.
Embraced it completely. Right. That's exactly right. Don't have to ask why. Just it works, right? Yeah. It works. That's great. So the hippie stomper, good one, very good one. Let's talk about a tune. What's something that you've been listening to at the Vice, or when you're deep in thought or working, writing?
Yep. You know, lately, especially with all of the just anxiety surrounding COVID-19. I don't know about you, but my nerves have been a bit frayed, frankly, and just as a highly anxious time. So I have been turning to a lot of the classics by Ralph Vaughan Williams, who is one of my favorite composers. And I've been listening, you know, Fantasia on Green Sleeves, Fantasia on tunes from Thomas Tallis, some of his choral music. It has such strength and is so evocative of nature that I have found it kind of a balm in this challenging time.
Yeah. Now, when you listen, so are you listening on Spotify or something, or do you have the CDs, or do you have the vinyl that you put on? Or
no, I'm not a vinyl.
Not a vinyl.
Kids are vinyl people.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
No. Lately, mostly Spotify. Although I have quite a few of his things on my old Apple whatever. But lately, more Spotify is just so convenient.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and what you called it, the balm, a balm in these times. That's a good description. Wonderful description. So don't get too locked in. Keep the big picture in mind. Fish the hippie stomper.
All praise to the hippie stomper. Yeah.
And you're all set. That's fantastic. So talk to us just a bit as we wind this down here, but I know you're active in Trout Unlimited and the chapters and doing things with trout in the classroom and beyond. What's kinds of things are keeping you busy when you're not working, when you're not fly fishing yourself with the trout aspects?
Yeah. One of the things that I have really appreciated being involved in is there is a fellow who lives in the Whitehall area who's also a member of the chapter, Rob Herman, who works with high school kids, most of the ag classes, and works with them on stream ecology. And he has the Whitehall high school students in the spring and the fall out to a stream to do habitat improvement, where he's trying to get brook trout reproduction going. He has them doing handwork in areas that he can't get machinery into. So I come along as an adult and just an additional presence. And I've also been really excited to see that we've been able to get trout in the classroom in some of the schools down here. Whitehall High School, and a shout out to Melinda Goplin, who is a tremendous educator. Just really a unique person. And we've got some plans for some additional local high schools in the area as well. So chapter's been doing a tremendous job with that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Great programs. Trout Unlimited Trout in the Classroom is really a great program, and a great way for kids to get hands-on opportunities from the egg all the way through to release in the stream, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It is just a great thing for them.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Peter, thank you very much for being part of this 2 tips, a tie and a tune. Thanks for donating the trip chapter, the trip to the chapter, and for all your work with Trout Unlimited and with the environment and with the fisheries and the watershed. We sure appreciate it. Thanks for your time here.
Well, thank you very much. This is just a great format, and I look forward to hearing what some of the other chapter members are going to have to say.
It's great. Thank you.